Hey, we're on Hangout today with Aaron Krieshok. Hello, Aaron. How are you today?
Hello, hello. Good to be here. It is hot. Yeah, it's a desert, so it's quite hot today. A lot of sweating. I just had to walk to the grocery store and a lot of sweating, but I'm back in the AC now, so hopefully things will cool off a bit. Yeah, I do know. Yeah, you can't think straight, and yeah, it's just frustrating because you want to just sleep, thinking that will help, but then you can't sleep. It's kind of endless. Yeah, it's that global warming. Oh, I've been mostly working on projects. You know me, Project Lumen and various others, Iron Coin. Um, it's all coming along well. Everything takes longer than I think it will, as in apparently years longer than I think it will. But that's all right. That's life. Yeah, yeah. I probably told 100 people 2 weeks, and apparently I was lying to all of them. It wasn't a lie on purpose. It was just miscalculation. Yeah, this stuff takes a long time. It is, and it will always be right. At the same time, I will achieve a milestone that will involve a launch, a campaign, kind of putting more out there before the people, and so that'll be big, and that'll be kind of like I will take a little mini vacation once I achieve that point, because yeah, I've worked hard up to this point, and until that point, that's kind of my goal to get some things launched, moving forward, and then um, yeah, yeah, I've been in my cave, in my little monastery here, just cracking away and trying to do absolutely. I mean, I've felt that for a while. I've probably even voiced it on here. Like, I started the meetup a number of years ago in LA because of that reason. Honestly, I was getting already bored of the online community. I wanted to meet people in person, and that was going well. That went well for a number of years, actually. And then some people started coming into the community that started shaking things up, started inciting division, doing various things. And I don't know if they were doing it on purpose. Perhaps that was their assignment, but also perhaps it was just, it is kind of human nature. The ego is there, right? And a lot of people don't have a healthy ego, just say. And so they're going to do things that will appear narcissistic, and they'll do the gaslighting. They'll incite division amongst the community in order to get them to the top of whatever cult they're trying to create. And I saw that. It seems like it happened more and more. I don't know, 2016, 2017, and it chased a lot of people away, I would say. You've been going strong, even though your channel's taken away a number of times, and that's unfortunate. And that's what their aim is to kind of just shut people like us up. They want us just to be quiet, so they can keep their false narrative, their fake spinning ball fantasy, alive, and keep everyone just kind of under that base level of sleep. Yeah, I mean, we've known that, or I've known that for quite a while. I think that was. I mean, once you realize that our cosmology is not what we were all taught in school, and it was all pushed as fact. And once you realize that that's not the case, I think that kind of opens the door to, well, they could be lying about anything else. We can't really trust any of the history that we think we know. We can't really trust any of the things we see on television, or even just on the internet. You can't necessarily trust anything, unfortunately. That's the reality we live in right now. And I think, people are waking up to that. Oh, well, I don't know. I do. I do want to get away from it. I know a lot of people do. A lot of people want to get off grid, but I think the reality is you can't. In many ways, you can't. Like, you cannot avoid the system that is prevalent across the entire plane, right? But you still have income tax, you still have sales tax, and because we have, I'd say, the greatest freedoms guaranteed, by the Constitution here. And even though there's a lot, well, we probably have better. I mean, it depends where you're at. You know, I'm here in California. Yeah, but actually, where I'm at in California, not so much. This weather is pretty hot. It gets really hot here. It gets, it's a desert, so I'm in the desert. But the coastal region's very nice. Certain areas, like I really like Colorado. I actually spent some time in Wisconsin, but can't handle the bugs in Wisconsin. Um, at the Denver International Airport, which has got their crazy, satanic, blood-eyed horse, blue horse, that when you first drive in, with like bulgy veins, it's crazy. And then that airport, well, it was built on top of a whole tunnel system. That tunnel system goes, for one place, it goes to Cheyenne Mountain. We know that there's a 30-story building built into that mountain for the elite in case something were to happen. They fly to DIA, Denver International Airport. It's called DIA also, which is weird. And then they're shuttled below ground to safety to Cheyenne Mountain. Like, this is known. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is fact. Now I've also heard that the elite have moved on and they've upgraded and they're not even going to use that anymore because they've got a better situation, probably in Switzerland or something. But like, yeah, I mean, Colorado, Denver is very much the nucleus. The bigger difficulty is that it's nuanced. So there's some truth. It's like truth in plain sight, and they mix lies with truth. So you don't necessarily know unless you do enough research and investigation. You don't really know what's based on any sense of truth or not. You know, um, and then there's a lot of information that we just don't get. Like, for example, Epstein. I mean, I think we will have some public hearings of some of this stuff, and we already have had some. Well, maybe, maybe not. I'm not going to claim to know that because I've seen enough evidence to suggest that there's more than one game going on here, Karen. Um, that's the nuance that's very difficult for most people to understand, especially people who are pretty awake, who have been awakened to various conspiracies. And they have a tendency to want to just put it all in a pile and say, oh, all of government is bullshit. All politicians are full of it. Everything you see on the television is fake. And that's just not accurate. Now, it's somewhat accurate. There's a lot of fake politicians, corrupt people in all industries, yes. And then there's most of what you see on television is completely BS. And then some of it is true. But how do you discern what is what? That's the difficulty. And that's why we have to be able to research for ourselves. And we have to be able to think for ourselves. Like yeah, I think it's Mark Twain said, if you don't watch the news, if you don't follow the news, you're uninformed. If you follow the news, you're misinformed. And that's true. It's very true. Right? But here's the thing. It's better to be misinformed than uninformed. Didn't. I don't know if I ever did, but yeah, most people do, yeah. And right. Well, and like President Trump's a very good example here because there's a lot of debate and evidence kind of on both sides of the coin of whether Trump is, quote, a good guy or a bad guy, right? Now, everyone seems to agree that Hillary Clinton is a bad player. But here's the thing: is do we really know that? Like just throwing a plain devil's advocate to myself for a second. What if all the stuff that was created about Hillary Clinton was all part of Trump's ruse to get everyone kind of against the Democrats, against certain players, right? Uh, it could be. I've certainly considered that possibility because that is, like, at one level, that's what it looks like, especially if you look at all the QAnon stuff and it's just like, well, it's all. And I don't, especially with Gaddafi, I mean, his people loved him. Why would they love him so much if he was like this evil dictator that was just killing people mercilessly? Maybe there's a little more evidence with that regarding Saddam Hussein, but is there? Because that's the thing, is like, where did we get that evidence from? The news? Okay, they have weapons of mass destruction, but did they? No, they didn't. After we looked, so was that war warranted? Huh? this. And the worst thing about that was that we not only kind of just took down their leaders, but we just left them high and dry for, I think, even years without any leadership. So what's going to happen in that situation? You're going to have the militias, the criminal factions rise to power, and that's exactly what happened. And that's really I think the caliphate and all this stuff. Like that's how they rose to power, because we just left them leaderless because we took over. And that's known. That's been even like kind of admitted by our country. We think as the Western mindset that we know better, that we believe that our science is so much better. But really, and there's truth in the kind of the mentality of like seeing the Western world as the devil and trying to like kind of destroy the world. Because you and I can look at things like science and recognize that that they do not follow the scientific method. It's merely a religion that they have successfully pushed. Right, right. That's very, very true. And I realized that I went to college for a few years, and I kind of realized how tunnel vision most of these scientists were. I studied physics, and some of these, talk about ego, talk about narcissists. That's pretty much the academic system. It builds up your ego. You get through the 4 years, and then maybe you go all the way through the 8 years, get your PhD. Man, your ego is huge. They have built up your ego so big, and they've built up your debt. So now your debt, financially, you can't justify denying the education that you just paid 6 figures for in any way whatsoever. You cannot comprehend the idea of your education being invalid in any way. And so that's why so many people, especially the scientific community, have such a hard time with certain facts that go against accepted belief. And I'm not even just talking flat Earth. I'm talking about a lot of things that are contrary to what they're pushing. A great example is climate change. Global warming, it was global cooling. Then it became global warming. And then they became so confused they just decided to call it climate change. And this is literally the platform that all these Democratic candidates are trying to run on. Absolutely, but here's the thing: is the science shows the real science, as in people doing scientific experiments using the scientific method, show that we are not in a crisis of climate change. That the temperature has changed on average by less than a degree, a single degree, on average over decades and centuries. Oh yeah, of fear, and so then now we need to bring in bigger government. The government needs to come in and help us with this problem that we're all afraid of. Why are we afraid of it? Because the government made us afraid of it. And it's completely based. I mean, that's talk about science denying. Like they accuse people like us of science denying. No, it's the climate. Anyone who says anything about climate change is denying the current science. The current science shows that it's less than a degree over centuries. It's so. And this has been on the floor of Congress. They've had these scientists come on and talk about how this is not a problem. There's no concern. There's no immediate threat anywhere for them to say literally things like in 12 years, the world's going to be done because of climate change. There's no basis for saying that. But this is literally what they're pushing hard. They're pushing it hard as if there's any evidence whatsoever to back up their claims. I mean, we got to understand that currently in these times, as in like this year and these months and these weeks and these days, it's getting worse and worse where the media is straight out lying. It used to be bad. Now it's horrendous. Like they're just fabricating stories left and right, making them up. They'll publish it to the New York Post, and then CNN will be like, oh wow, so the New York Post has this story, blah blah blah, and then they report on it as if it's news. But really it's just this closed feedback loop. It's an echo chamber where they're just contriving the news that feeds their agendas. And what are their overall agendas? Their overall agenda is to get Trump out of presidency any way they can. That has been their agenda. That has been their agenda. Trump came along, and then their agenda shifted to getting Trump out of office. Anyway, literally, they tried to stage a coup. They failed. Every aspect of that coup has been exposed. The criminals involved. The video you showed me, there is digital artifacting where essentially through digital compression of video, you get effects like what you see on a lot of that stuff, where and how that works is basically it tries to compress the video by grabbing frames that are similar. It'll sort of save that. So then rather than rewriting the whole frame, it only has to write a certain portion. But if you have someone who's moving more quickly, it's going to confuse that. And it's going to cause digital artifacts. So we see that all the time on YouTube and anywhere where you're turning the video into a digital video, which is everywhere you see it nowadays. So I wouldn't put it past Google to mess with that stuff. I mean, they've been known to do subliminal messaging. They're Google is probably the most corrupt company in the world, and we know it, right? And so like we know that they've been manipulating search algorithms in favor of certain political candidates, not Trump, for example. And we know that they have been censoring, YouTube. We know that they've been unsubscribing people. They've been doing that for like 5 years, as far as I know. So it's all Google, and Google's behind it all. Like, so, and like the thing where the problem in their Hangout software, where like you could get porn bombed. They didn't fix that forever. I don't know if they fixed it recently now with the new Hangouts, but exactly how long it's going to take. And also, I have kind of a progressive rollout that I'm going to do with it. So I'm going to try to do like it's going to be little baby steps as far as rolling things out. And, a lot of it actually does relate to what goes on in the world. So kind of depending on how. Sure. Well, Project Lumen is overall, I'd say it's been my vision, my initiative to bring what I call light-based technology to Earth. And light-based technology is basically technology and techniques for doing things that is based on truth and light and goodness. And so ultimately, it's kind of like technology that we don't even really realize exists yet. A lot of it, and a lot of it's going to enable technology to blossom, to become much more powerful as it's used for good. Then we are sort of able to use more technology. But if we use technology for bad or evil or selfish purposes, then we are limited. And that's not just as an individual, that's actually as the collective. And so part of the initiative here is to bring the whole platform for this light-based technology to surface and start becoming prominent in this world. And we'll see the shift because of it. And we're already seeing it. Not just because of what I'm doing, but because I'm not the only one doing this, really. I'm just perhaps the only one calling it this. But this is kind of a phenomena that's occurring as we speak, as the world is changing and waking up. And so I'm kind of developing these various projects in coordination with that awakening, along with kind of just the world, how the world is evolving and what it needs. There's solutions to the world's problems coming about through a connection to source and in a response to the world really desiring these changes, but not really being able to, I guess, generally, we haven't been able to figure out how to implement these solutions. Because I say generally we don't even know what the problems are, and so my mission in life, it's upgrading the idea of a government, because really the only purpose of a government is to govern ourselves. Really, ultimately, like if we were connected back in, let's say, the 1700s, when the Constitution was being written. If we had the internet, if we had blockchain technology, if we had various other things, that's what would have been used to ensure that our liberties are protected, our divine liberties are protected. And I'd say the Constitution did a great job up until now, but it's been attacked greatly over the centuries. And so this is kind of a revival of that initial intention. The initial founders had an intention, and that intention came from a place, and that place is the same place that Project Lumen is coming from. It's essentially ensuring a basic righteousness here on earth. Like, because if we don't have this, what happens is what we see. We see all these countries where they don't have the rule of law, for example, and therefore you have corruption that runs rampant. And when corruption runs rampant, then no one is safe in that country. There's no real protection from crime and corruption. It is where we're at. No, it's where we're at now. Uh, I'd say that it's gotten worse over the years, and that's because they're trying to destroy these protections. And now, you'll notice that Reagan. You're exactly right. Actually, he was the last one that they elect. He was the last free election, the last legit election. Until, and I don't even think you could call the 2016 election legit, because there was so much, messing around with the election. But yeah, I think Reagan was one of the last people who was more legitimately voted into office, and they said, no, we can't let that happen again. Yeah, 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 absolutely. That's absolutely correct, and I mean, that's why something needed to be done, and I think something is being done, and we might not see it. It moves slow. It does, but it has to. It has to move slow, because if it doesn't, then it disrupts too much. People start losing. We're on the verge of a civil war here in the U.S. We're on the verge of sort of this global instability. The government should have more control, because that's their key. So understand this. All right. So look at like the central banks. They came in the late 1800s, and then you had the Federal Reserve in 1913, and that essentially established. That's when income tax also started, which was unconstitutional until they amended the Constitution in 1913. Passed it through all sneakily during, like, when everyone was gone for Christmas. And ever since, that's over 100 years, we've been under this sort of very fraudulent, very corrupt system. The central banks really controlled by a few various countries. And then you have the Federal Reserve, and they're essentially just manipulating the monetary supply, printing as much money as they want, basically, drastically inflating the currency supply and deflating the value of the dollar. And they've been doing this until 2008. There was the massive housing bubble, and a lot of people lost their homes. A lot of people lost a lot of money. And then we bail out the banks with all these billions of dollars. And what happens right after that? Bitcoin. Bitcoin comes in 2009. Bitcoin, having your money in a bank, a central bank, which you have no guarantee except for this thing they say FDIC. That's no guarantee at all, for the record. No guarantee that your money is going to be safe. If the internet went down, if the power goes out, guess what? Your money's gone, because it was digital, right? It's not gold backed anymore. So the money doesn't exist. It's all imaginary. They just created it out of nothing. If we all did a bank run, demanding our money in the bank, it wouldn't be there. It's not. Fractional reserve banking means that they only have to hold 1/10 of what they've loaned out, and that other 90% is just made. No, the Federal Reserve printing the money. And then if any country goes against the Federal Reserve printing the US dollar, guess what happens? We go in there, we say that they're terrorists. We go in there, we fabricate some excuse to go in there and destroy take out their leadership. Gaddafi is a great example. He was creating his nation's own currency. Actually, Saddam Hussein was also getting off the petrodollar, creating their own currency, and that's what they don't like. That's what they would go against, right? And so, but then what happens? Bitcoin is a response to this problem, and it's actually a solution to this problem, because now you can have your money in Bitcoin, and no one can take it away from you. If the economy collapses, your Bitcoin is still there. Now, here's the thing. It's important to understand that if the power were to go out and the internet were to go out, well, if it goes out forever, we're screwed anyway. But it's never going to go out forever, because we're going to find a way to get it back online. And once we get it back online, your Bitcoin is still there, because it's not even saved. It's like there's so many backed up copies of the. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And this is the populist movement that's happening. So it's not just me. This is what Trump's doing. This is what's happening in Hong Kong. This is what's happening. It already pretty much happened in Italy. This is what's happening in France, even UK. Even the Brexit itself is an attempt it's like the populace of, they want to separate. They don't want to be a part of the EU. And that's because they sort of want to govern themselves. Exactly. And so of course they want to have control over every country in that region, and then they want to have the single monetary supply, the euro, and they want to have and then they want to connect the euro to the US dollar in a way where it's inseparable, and what they call the Amero, if you remember that. But that is never going to work, because at this point, because of cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is going to ensure that never works. We're never going to have a one world currency that's run by central banks. Now, we might have a one world cryptocurrency, but probably not even that, because there's always going to be capitalism here, and there's always going to be room for competitors to try to make a better cryptocurrency. And I don't know if Bitcoin will be the one in 20 years, but it doesn't matter really, because it will be some alternative. It won't be the centralized banks that currently have power. They're losing their power. What we're seeing is their reaction to losing their power. They own the media. They owned, or they do own pretty much the main social platforms, which is Google, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, by the very least. The biggest company, the biggest platform in that space. So their intention was never to help people. Their intention was never to give people a good income or salary. Like, a lot of people made money on YouTube, and then they realized how bad of an idea that was, because YouTube could just take it away whenever they wanted for no reason at all. And that's true, maybe not as true with eBay, but but eBay has they're sort of regulating. What happens is these companies become so big in a space which was new, and they can dominate, and it's before really any regulation is established. And so that's what we're seeing. Like right now, all these platforms are protected by the Article 230, which basically says that if you're a social media platform, then you're not considered a private publisher. And so therefore you're not liable for the content that the users put on to your platform. So if someone does creates a YouTube video that slanders someone else, YouTube's not going to be liable for that. And so that's their protection, and that was put there in order to protect these social platforms as they grow. But now, and for the last however many years, these platforms have been abusing it. And that's probably the main thing that's going to come as a result, because they're acting like publishers. If they censor someone because of their political opinion, they're censoring. They're not an unbiased platform. And if they're not an unbiased, but there's a lot of people, quite honestly, that they don't watch television,
but they consider themselves awake and knowledgeable of these things, but they will not pay attention to the news. And that's the thing, is like, you can't just disregard it all if you're not willing to pay attention to it. And that, I pay attention to it. You know, I do watch the news. I do watch what's going on. I don't believe it all. I don't hardly believe any of it. You know, I'm able to watch it with a detachment so that I'm not just being, you know, brainwashed like a lot of people who watch it, but I'm connecting dots. I'm always connecting the dots of what I see behind what I've researched, what I know is going on. Yeah. Let me think. Well, if you're out there and you've wondered, where's Aaron at? Is he still working? I am. I've been working very hard. I have a lot of vision, a lot of plan, and very excited about it. And I would just recommend to people to just kind of like stay tuned to what I'm doing. Um, I'm not going to make a huge deal about it, honestly. I will tell the world, you know, to some degree what I'm doing, but I at least want people to just kind of know that it's going to be it's kind of like an exclusive club where if you're in the know, you're a part of the team, you're in, and you'll be a part of this whole movement. But if you're not, then you won't necessarily, you know. And I'm not going to like push it in people's faces, but I am inviting people. So if you wanted to go to Ironcoin or projectlumen.org or .com, sign up, then I'll have your info and I'll keep you informed. Other than that, it's all going to be miraculous and awesome. And so stay tuned for Project Lumen. Yes, you have. It's been good. You've helped all along the way. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And